Hi guys, how you doing? Uh, is the sound okay and the video all right? Boy, looks like everyone got started without me, which is okay. That's ah okie doke. All right. Well, I want to greet everybody. Stefan, watch aficionado, Geezer, NS something. Boy, there were oh good. Uh, the what I wanted to talk about today is something the watch companies keep wanting to come up with something, and I'll put it in quotes, new. Most of the newness has to do with something new in the look of a watch because dials are relatively easy to switch to try different things, and I think that's interesting. As you know, as long as you stay away from if it didn't exist uh, during Abraham Louis Breguet's day, or a little afterward. We'll say 1920. How is that for arbitrary date? If it didn't exist by 1920, which is exactly 100 years ago, maybe it's something that we ought to think about in a different way. Hey, longshoreman, how you doing? Gilberto, how are you? This is what's sort of been on my mind. I'm saying, okay, well, I'm collecting watches, and I've got my different kinds of watches. I have a resonance, I have a 7 day, and I have a time only, and so on and so forth. So, in terms of different types of, I really don't have much of a chronograph. I have my monoretropont, but it's not a well, it is a chronograph, but not really designed as a chronograph. That's probably one I ought to think of. I want to have a remontoire of some sort. But when you look at the sort of the general um, what is being produced right now, you don't have a lot of things that are saying, look, if I were making watches in 1920 or even better, right before the French Revolution, what new and different could I try? Now, Abraham Louis Breguet came up with tons of stuff. He had all of these innovations that he had, and very little of those innovations are have been dumped totally. I mean, some of them have been not because they're bad ideas, but because they're too complex to make. And what I'd like to throw out to you is the not new technology. Let's face it, new technology I've got in my Fitbit, I got on my iPhone, I got on my computer. We have an Alexis, but I haven't turned it on yet. My wife doesn't trust him, so that's okay. But we don't really need anything computer based. I mean, if we're talking about mechanical watches, let's talk about mechanical watches. Now, there's two edges to this sword. One edge is making things affordable, and the other edge is encouraging craftsmanship. The On the one hand, there's this company I had been talking about that Festina owns, and it has a French name. It's M something or other. Um, Let me see if I can find it real quick. And rats. Yeah, it's called MHVJ. That's the part that I can pronounce. Now, here, for those of you, and that's something, bear with me, I'm going to do my best. Hi, Glenn Van Noon. How you doing? I'm going to try to pronounce it, and I know I'm not going to do it very well, but it's the best I can do. It's Manufacture Horlogerie Vallée des Jours. Okay, and it's a company owned as, and they refer to as MHVJ, because I can pronounce MHVJ. And it's owned by the Festina Group, and Festina owns Sopra and some of the other things. And what they do is that they're using nanotechnology in the manufacture of mechanical watches. And here is where I'm sort of wondering, like, maybe that would be a place to go for mass-produced mechanical watches that look like the kind of on laws and some of the other kinds of things we do to make watches really look nice. Okay, so that's one direction. The other direction is quite the opposite, and that is more and more of people like Stefan Kadoki and Rolf Lang and Marco Lang and F.P. Jorn, Terry Wooten Lonan, those guys doing handmade watches, really. So it's to me, but where would they go with it? This, I guess, is I'm really not too interested in watches that are, the same old thing. Either that, or they're starting to put in a lot of silicon, and they're non-magnetic, a lot of things like that. But so is niobium, and so is some of these others that they have. So but what I wanted to do with you guys, now the ball is in your court, so to speak. Give me some ideas of what you do with a sort of a early 19th century technology available, and not in terms of, well, I'll say in terms of metallurgy. Well, not even metallurgy, just metals that were available that they use, which the silicon and psyllium has been around forever, but we're going to sort of discount those. Okay, so let's see your ideas. Okay, invariably you'll have innovations in components, etc., but it will probably take at least another generation to become the norm or the trend. I don't know why. Let's do it now. I'm hey, I'm trying to put together these my experiment with resonance. Well, by the way, I got a really good tip on that. It said, why don't you use glass or steel or something where your resonance can better go from one to the other? But I don't know if that's the way resonance works, but I do like that idea of having a sort of a metal base to whatever I try to put it on. So I'll get a hunk of metal somewhere and I'll pull a fender off my car and lay it down and try to do it. Okay, that is simply the kind of thinking, I think, rather than, let's program everything. Any of us, I think if you're a programmer, you can do that. Let's see. Let's be honest. I love innovation, but I'm not sure I'd buy it. Well, Stefan, then don't. I mean, you add something to your Apple Watch collection. You're asking for a perpetual motion machine. I'm not. Let's see. Watch efficient. I simply want a watch with a movement that does not ever need servicing. There's a lot. There's a lot of interesting possibilities to that. Look what Breguet did with that one. They used magnets on the top of and bottom of the balance shaft, and there's no friction whatsoever. And so when you're talking about a watch that never needs service, I don't know. I don't think it's a perpetual motion machine, but it's one that, let's say, you don't need service in your lifetime. That'd have to be very well built, and maybe little things might happen to it, but um, but that's not a small order, and nor is it an inexpensive one. I forget what they charge. They charge it like $30,000 or something for that brigade. Uh, okay, watch for sure. Now with the nanotechnology, okay, here's the thing with nanotechnology, and this is where the contradiction comes in. Um, the contradiction is this: is that we can make good old-fashioned watches, good old-fashioned brigade era watches with nanotechnology to look exactly like those watches. Uh, and so that's a possibility. Hey, Carlos. Hi, Williams Watches. How you guys doing? Rich buddy, how are you? So it's like, hey, Fahrenheit. So we have, something rather than, well, I'll change the dial or I'll add, I don't know what, we'll add a new complication. Like we'll multiply the complications. We'll have a perpetual calendar, and that we're going to have a power reserve indicator and a chronograph and a remontoire and a tourbillon. I mean, that's sort of like back in the old days, the bikers, when they used to ride those really slim down motorcycles with the handlebars up that, they refer to the motorcycles that had all of the packs and all other stuff on them, call them as junk wagons. And sort of like I don't, to me, the perfect watch is Philippe Dufour's Simplicity. Beautiful, beautiful design. It's got a great big balance wheel and so forth. This kind of design, I mean, we know the design, we know what it looks like, we know what the size of the parts and everything else, and we know this beautiful horloge that he has. Why not more like that? I mean, it's that's one of the things. The other part of it is the business end, and by the business end, I mean what watch can we make the most money from? Now, on the one hand, you've got sell a billion really cheap ones, or a couple really expensive ones. You take, for example, Kerry Vuitton. Maybe he makes 20, 30 watches a year, something like that, and they start around $70,000. Well, he's got a staff, he's got to pay, and so on and so forth. I think he lives. His outfit is just outside of Fleurier in Switzerland. All right, now you can, and he travels a lot. My God, I've run into Kerry Vuitton at more watch shows. And he's a very hardworking guy. He's also a smart businessman. He's got the Vuitton and Kaelin. They make watch cases, very nice ones too. I imagine they're probably pretty expensive. Okay, so you have, I mean, but you don't have many people like that. But could you mass produce something like that? Choppers, that's it, Rich buddy. That's it. The choppers the guys with the choppers refer to the other ones as crash wagons. It was funny. When I was a kid, we had chopper bikes. Yep, that's it. Okay, I think a lot of technology exists, but a lot of customer base don't care. All they go after is outdated movements that come out with a famous brand name. Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that, and that's where the problem is. That we got people who they can put all kinds of junk into a watch and they wouldn't know it. But so let's say that you say, okay, I'm a collector and I got all of these watches. If you don't come up with something new, I'm not buying anything from you. Okay, given that set of circumstances, what new maybe that they might come up with? Now, to me, one of the most exciting watches that I've seen recently is the Brigade Tradition. I think that's what it is. It's either called the Tradition or the Heritage, one of those two. And they got a watch that looked like Abraham Louis made it. And that's the kind of thing that would be a lot of fun. a lot of the stuff that F.P. Journe has done, he got from Louis Breguet via George Daniels. But the most famous book that George Daniels wrote, the one that everybody knows, is this one. It's called Watchmaking. And I've talked to watchmakers, who are like serious watchmakers, and I say, this is the only book you need to be a watchmaker. But the book that's hard to get and expensive that George Daniels did, that I think F.P. Journe used the most, was, I think it was called The Art of Breguet. And that's a book I got to get my mitts on. Maybe that's one of the things I can do while we're waiting here. But that, what he did, he simply reached back, and I'd like to see more of that, because after all, the kind of watches we collect are mechanical watches. We don't need them for telling time, because my Fitbit even tells better time. If you get a few whacks, it'll say you walked X amount of places and here's the correct time. My computer's got the time, my iPhone's got the time. And if we put that on, it would have the time too. So we know that. So I don't think the technological thing is the way to go. Okay. But rather trying to go back. If you look at Rolf Lang Dresden, what Rolf Lang has done, I think he went back to Harrison, the English watchmaker. He's the guy that developed the naval chronometer. And so when you look at Lang's, what you find is that he has two levels. One is I guess sort of the regular level of balance, and then he has the marine level, or the marine chronometer. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Except, he's the kind of discussions that people seem to be having about watches. One, I think somebody pointed out already, it's the status of the watch. Like if it says Patek Philippe or Rolex, people get all excited about it. But if it's a really good watch, like Harbring, Richard Harbring, with a nice solid movement, simple as all get out, and they only make a handful of them, and don't charge very much. That, I think, that would be one direction. Okay, I've gone on enough. Let's hear from you guys. Let's see. Garrison was way ahead of everyone. Okay, let's see who Garrison is. Mark, let's see. Garrison. Gilberto, I don't know if they can be convinced. One thing that would be convincing, I think, is that people bought them, if that's what they wanted. I mean, if somebody goes and they pay, let's say, $5,000 for a watch, and they can get a Rolex, okay, doesn't matter what kind, they can get a Rolex for $5,000, or they can get another brand, Pepe Le Pew brand, and it has all of this innovation in it, they'll probably go with a Rolex. I know that, not because it's the best watch in the world or the most innovative, but it's well known and has a good reputation. So that's going to be hard. But all of us, I think, or a lot of us, we sort of get tired of the same old thing. And so this is sort of the audience I'm thinking of. Harrison, right? That's who I was thinking of, Mark. Harrison. Yeah, he was the guy who invented the marine chronometer that the English Navy desperately needed so they wouldn't get lost. Yeah, people really get a Rolex versus a Harbring too. I think Breitling did that, kept tradition with the new 321 Speedmaster. Oh boy. Oh boy. I until Breitling comes up and says, look, we're selling you a watch with an ETA 2829 or whatever in it, and instead of giving it some phony baloney name, I don't trust them. I don't think. I think they're shooting themselves in the foot by continuing to do that. So I can say nothing good about Breitling. Same with IWC. Simple thing to do. Simply put down, say, hey, this is the movement that we're using. A lot of other watch companies do that. They have their own in-house movement. You take a look at Christopher Ward, their watches. They got the SH21. They brag about it. They use it. If they don't have an SH21, they tell you, and they tell you which one they have in it. I just really cannot stand deception. Why should we? How can you say anything worthwhile about a company that's cheating you on one end? Because how can you trust them? I don't, and it's a shame because it's such an easy thing to do. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I always do that. You guys know that I always go off on that stuff. Hate being cheated, but if it's okay with you, you can have them. Interested, does that still have to be serviced by Moser? I don't know. Tradition is a big barrier, ironically. I don't know. Okay. Do you know where you can buy HQ movements used in making a watch? Glenn. Now, sort of. Okay. I know, like, I think you can buy a Vauchur movement if you buy 25 of them, and they're around $1,000 a pop. So you're talking about $25,000 investment just to get one movement. Some other ones, some of the soap prods are really good, but I think one of the best ones they had was the A10, which was really a 4L Seiko that Seiko tried to, get into high horology with, and it flopped because their customer base at the time was inexpensive watches. I don't know. This is for you guys. This is how come I'm asking you guys these questions. What can you do? Oh, also, Glenn, other high quality parts. You get the cases from Wooten Lannon and Kalin. And let me see. A watch company that I really like, Ophion, because they tell you where all of the parts are from, where they got the parts. And that was how I found out about that Festina company, the MHJ something or other, that uses all of these nanotechnologies to recreate not only the watches but the different parts in case they need a new part. They'll have a bunch of them that they've made. High GMT master. Okay. William, what level of horology would you place Rolex Cellini Prince? I would put it in high horology for this reason. They have done something. They're the only watch I know, and there may be more, not that there aren't any, just the ones that I know. If you look at I don't know if it'd be Guilloche or simply engraving or something on the dial, and then how they continue it on the movement. To me, that is definitely high horology. It's near exceptional horology. That is such a beautiful movement that it's sort of like, how can they not? In that, though, they have different versions of it, but they also have different versions of this, of the way they handle it. I think there's like 3 different kinds. There's sort of the square one, and then there's a round one, And then there's one other one in gold that's really interesting that uses some other kind of thing. So yeah, on what Rolex can do, the thing about it is Rolex is like super smart business company. To me, they're very smart about what they do. They have very high quality production. They have they got that thing down pat. But the one watch that to me was just like a beautiful example of that kind of the best horology they got rid of because people didn't want it. And being a business company more than sort of a horological phenomena, they had to make the decision on business. Patek Philippe did the same thing with the Gondola. One of my favorite watches was the Prestige de France that Vacheron Constantin had. They had three versions of it, of the 1972, I think is what it was, 1972, when they won the Prestige de France. And but they got rid of it because people didn't like it. And I think it's great, but if I didn't want to go broke, I wouldn't listen to someone like me. Okay, if Moser has a modular escapement, is the rest of the watch so easy to disassemble for cleaning and maintenance? I don't, Gilberto, that's a really good question. And here's the answer to it. I don't know whether they're still doing it. Here was the idea behind it. Okay, somebody sends their watch in for service. They take out this module with the hairspring and what else? The hairspring and the balance, and sort of have a little thing. You take that out, and two things. One, they can just swap in one that's already been serviced, so you're not going to take as much time. And if there's nothing else wrong with it, they can, do the lube and pop it back. They can get really quick turnaround with that. But for some reason, there was some other things about it, and I'm not sure whether they're still doing it or not. The thing is that like a lot of watch companies, they don't update their website very often. And when they do, they got people who are not really very smart about information design. They may know about graphic design, but man, I tell you, they got these slow, just like molasses slow websites that are pretty. But what you want to do is, what are the watches they have? What do they cost? What's in them? And so on and so forth. You can't move around those things very quickly, and it drives me nuts. And this is FP Journe. Rolex, I don't know who did their site. And until you know sort of the non-intuitive path, you have a hard time finding stuff. Vacheron Constantin's a little better, not much. So you have all of these, like just, if you go to the sort of the best example of a site that just stupid slow is the Grand Prix d'Horlogerie de Genève.org, gphg.org. Terrible website and very poor information design. As watch collectors, we need information. Now, some of the ones, there's some, what was it? I think it was I was looking up something. I was looking up Humphrey Bogart's watch at Longines yesterday, and I went to the Longines site, and it wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't great, but it wasn't as bad as these other ones that are really expensive watches. Of course, they didn't have as much. The information was not very robust, if you know what I mean. It's the movement automatic. They don't tell you anything about the movement. They get, like I said, they could have a hamster on a running wheel, and people would never know. Okay, let's see what you guys are talking about. Since I can't get a Vasseur movement to make my own watch, I would probably get an Atelier Messline watch from Singapore with one in it. Yeah, Mark, that is that's to me, that's a really nice way to go about things. What would be cool if we could make a group buy where, like find, 25 people who wanted a Vasseur to work with and all chip in and get it together. But you know what? I would never coordinate anything like that because I don't like handling other people's money. Um, so I wouldn't do it. But I mean, that would be one way to do it. In fact, wouldn't it be cool if Lang and Hyde had one of their UWD 31 point something or other? They've got one of the most beautiful movements. But I've emailed them and I said, hey, what would one of those cost? Nothing. They didn't even respond to me. And that would be something. These watch companies are still thinking like it's 1980. Maybe this whole thing with the COVID-19 will help break open some innovation. I sure hope so. How are we doing on time? Yikes, we're out of time, guys. Okay, let me see if there's anyone here who I didn't recognize. Hey, Joas, how you doing? Let's see, Blaine. Lee, hi Lee, how you doing? Yeah. Hey, Clyde. um, okay. Hey, Mezzine 44. Many remakes of old classics are redone with plain ETA movement, which they don't do precisely. Yeah, John, you're right. But even that might work. If you take an old ETA back far enough, it was an independent watch company like Pazoo and some of the other ones. Hi now, Shed. Just woke up. Ah, man, sorry. He coughed. Run for your. I cough a lot. You know what the coughing's about? This is something freaking people out, especially in this country where we have lots of trees and flowers and things. Spring is coming, so we get all of this pollen, and so that's going to be coughing mostly behind that. Well, listen, I got to run. Yeah, I know, Geezer. Let's not make that comparison, Geezer, please. Okay, Boris Johnson, I see you. Man, that's yeah. He said something that was really great. He said, "Look, guys, don't be like me. Don't listen to me." Jeez. Okay. Hasta luego. See you this afternoon if you're dropping by. Otherwise, you're trying to get some beauty sleep, and I'm still talking. Go to bed. Take care. Wear your mask. Social distance, and be safe.